In this video, we're going to do a little discussion about fish finders and kayaks. I see a lot of questions out there as to whether or not you should get one for your kayak. Is it worth it? Also, what should you get as far as size goes and the features. So I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of having a fish finder on a kayak, and also some things you want to look for when you are purchasing one. So first things first, a fish finder, there's really no defined answer as to yes, you should have one or no, you shouldn't, because it depends on the type of fishing you're doing. I consider a fish finder to be a tool in your tool bag. You're not going to use that tool all the time, but when you need it, it's nice to have it. I mainly fish inshore flats, less than 3 feet of water, so the fish finder does not really come in handy in those situations. The GPS and the chart plotter can, because you can see where you've been, you can see where you're at, so that can definitely help. And with kayaks, you're usually going through, mangrove tunnels and all these mazes of creeks, and it's nice to know where you've been and how to get back out of there. So that's definitely a plus. Now, there may be a time, for instance, where there's going to be a bunch of fish schooled up around, bridges or around inlets and passes, deeper canals, stuff like that. And that's where the fish finder, I feel, really comes into play, because you'll have no idea where those fish are unless you can see what's going on down there on the bottom, especially if those fish are schooled up, because you'll definitely be able to see them. As you can see in this footage, I was on a big school of black drum. You can clearly see them on the bottom with the fish finder I'm using. This is a Simrad Go 5 series. It's a 5-inch screen. And the way I actually have it mounted, I'll just talk about that. My kayak has slide tracks on them, or gear tracks, and I'm using a ram mount. This is a 1.5-inch ball connected to an arm, and then on the back of the fish finder, there's actually a mount for that. This is used for Lowrance or Simrad. You may have to do some searching as far as which one will work for your particular unit, but for Lowrance and Simrad, this clip back here works very well, and all you do is pull up on that and it pops out. And that is what the mount looks like. So I just put that onto the kayak and I am good to go. And then really quickly, the way that I power this thing up, I use the Naqua battery. This is actually Yak Attack's version, but uses a Naqua lithium battery. It's a 12 volt, 10 amp hour battery, and it weighs less than 2 pounds. It's super light, which is definitely a plus if you are using this in a kayak. And it doesn't take up much room, which is definitely a plus when installing in a kayak. Those are two things you don't want: any extra unnecessary weight and anything taking up too much room. So next up are the cons of having a fish finder on your kayak, or the downfalls. And one of the biggest ones being the price. You could spend anywhere from $200 up to $1,000 at the end of the day for the unit itself, plus the hardware to mount it onto your kayak, the installation, and also a way to power it up. So definitely be aware of that. It will cost a pretty penny, but if you want something decent that is going to give you a lot of good detail, a lot of features, I would highly recommend this unit right here. It runs for about $500, a Simrad Go 5 XSE. Now, I'm not sponsored or affiliated with this company. This is just something that I've been using, and I'm very pleased with it. So I wanted to share that with you. And the battery itself, these run for about 120 bucks. So after installation and everything, I spent about $600 for the unit, mounting hardware, and the power source. Now, another downfall of having a fish finder on your kayak is the fact that the screen can get in your way, especially if you're paddling, just because you want that screen close enough that you can see what's going on, but you don't want it too close that it's going to get in the way of your paddling. So you definitely have to be aware of that. Placement is very key. You don't want to just install it anywhere on the kayak. Usually I keep it about as far away from me as my rod holder, because a rod holder doesn't get in the way. So if this is far enough back, it shouldn't get in the way. And then you can also, what's nice about this mounting arm is, you can adjust it. You can push it back if you need to. You can push it forward so it's closer to you. You can get a longer arm So that way you can push it further away from you, and then when you're ready to fish, you can pull it nice and close so you can see what's going on the screen. Now, as far as some of the features that I like to have on my fish finder when using it from a kayak, it's pretty much standard. You know, I like to have side imaging or side scan. Different manufacturers call it different things, but side scan is going to allow you to see more in shallow water and also see more in deeper water. So it really helps across the board because it scans out to the sides as opposed to just seeing what's directly below you. So that definitely helps. And then there's down scan, which is what's directly below you, sort of out to the side, depends on how deep you are. You know, that down scan signal sends a signal down in a cone shape. So the deeper you are, the wider that cone is. The shallower you are, the more narrow that cone is. So definitely keep that in mind. And then lastly is, of course, the GPS and the chart plotter. That's going to help you a lot, especially in a kayak. That's probably one of the features you'll use the most, I feel like, in a kayak, because it can help you get to where you're going and also get back from where you've been. You know, like I said earlier, if you're fishing around a bunch of islands and mazes of creeks, it can get very confusing, and you don't have to pull out your phone every 2 minutes to figure out where you're at. You have it all right in front of you on the screen. Now, going back to the side imaging, what I forgot to mention is that the transducer for side scan and side imaging is going to be very long. You know, the transducer for this one is about 7 to 8 inches long, if not longer, so you definitely have to have an effective way to mount that where there's nothing in the way. So you may have to buy a transducer arm that extends off your kayak, which attaches to one of these rail mounts, or you may have a kayak such as a Hobie Outback or a Hobie Pro Angler, which has a plate underneath, and you can actually attach the transducer directly to that plate, which it's made for. So you may have to get a little bit creative with that, and that may cost a few extra bucks, but again, side scan, side imaging will definitely help if you're on a kayak. So basically, to sum it all up, would I recommend a fish finder on your kayak? Absolutely. Because like I said, it's a tool. If you need it, it's nice to have it. Especially if you want to, you know, start venturing out to different locations, different types of areas, because that's going to make you a more well-rounded angler instead of just focusing on just the flats. You know, the flats are good certain times of the year, but other times of the year you do need to fish those deeper spots to find some quality fish. And also, if you haven't done so already, definitely be sure to check out our Salt Strong Insider Club, where we go out every week and we let you know what's going on, you know, where the fish are at, what types of areas they're holding in. That way you can have a better chance of going out and finding those fish. Because what's most important when it comes to fishing is actually finding active feeding fish. Spots are nice and all, but those spots will change on a day-to-day basis, week to week, month to month, and season to season. So you need to be aware of those changes so you can go out and start catching more fish.